Welcome to our State of the Industry Nonprofit Organizations panel. We're really excited that you're here and we're looking forward to hearing from all of our panelists. So what I'm going to do is just ask them to introduce themselves. Maybe we'll go in alphabetical order by first name. And if you want to say your name and your preferred pronouns, that would be great. Share a little bit about where you're working and anything else you feel like would be great to start us off with. So I'll turn it over, I think, to Amy first.
Hi, I usually get to the end because I'm an S, so you threw me starting with the A's. Hi, I'm Amy Selko. I am the founder of Selco Strategies, which is a new consulting effort that I launched this past fall. I'm she, her, hers, and my career has been in nonprofit leadership, management, fundraising. I actually spent some time working at Ithaca College in admissions after I graduated in 1997. Went on to earn a degree in higher education administration, worked in alumni affairs and annual fund at Harvard, and then went into arts administration. So I worked for professional theaters doing frontline fundraising. And then I did some international development, frontline fundraising. Most recently was working in Washington, D.C., which is where I am now, in youth development. So investing in my home community in youth development, and then kind of took all those experiences and packaged them all together. I'm now working independently with a number of different organizations, including an organization that trains young women, bipartisan organization that trains young women to run for office, another international organization, and a small arts group. Welcome to everyone and happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle West. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I graduated Ithaca College in 2013 and have a master's in education from Boston University. And since college, I moved to Boston and did 2 years with AmeriCorps with City Year, and then found myself teaching for a little while and now in the nonprofit management sector. And my organization is called Project 351, and our mission is to unite an 8th grader from every city and town of Massachusetts for a year of community service, youth development, and leadership. So I am in the cross sector of youth development and education empowerment with middle school students. And I'll turn it over to Donette.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the call today. So my name is Donette. My last name actually just changed last year because I got married. So it was Donette Ritchie before. I don't know if you guys have heard. I was involved with Spit That, the poetry club, and then now my last name is Samuel. So just in case you're like, well, it looks like the same Donette, but I'm not sure it's the same Donette. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I graduated in 2014. Right after graduation, I actually entered into a master's program to get a Master of Public Health. And following that degree, I ended up working as a grant writer at a medtech company for a few years. Then I joined the Peace Corps from 2017 to 2019, and I recently just started this new position at the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, as the Public Affairs Specialist and Community Involvement Coordinator. So my work overall is within public health and environmental health. I'll turn it over to Jonathon.
Hi, everyone, and congratulations, Donette, for getting married. So my name is Jonathon Cummings, and I graduated from Ithaca College in 2015. And after I graduated, I worked in a law firm for a year. Then I did my master's at Cornell in public administration. And my concentration was government politics and policy studies. So I've been involved with a numerous amount of various nonprofits, but primarily my interest and focus is international affairs. So the organizations I've been involved with, they've all had an international sway, international focus. So I worked with the Global Peace Foundation for a little bit as a diplomatic engagement associate. While I was at Ithaca College, I was involved with the American Red Cross. And for a while, I was involved with the World Human Accountability Organization as a partnership manager. But currently, it's an organization I'm representing right now. is called the Alliance of NGOs and CSOs for South-South Cooperation. And it's involved with the UN, so it has a whole bunch of unnecessary terminology. But with the Alliance, it's a committee that works specifically with the UN Office of South-South Cooperation, and it advanced the interests of NGOs and CSOs, so pretty much nonprofit organizations in developing countries, and advocates on their behalf to the United Nations and the United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation. And I'm a member of the steering committee, so I guess I come up with cool ideas and tell and advise the office what to do. So that's me. And I'll turn it over to Stamie. Is that her?
Good try. I always say Tammy with an S, Stamie. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm just going to share my background because it kind of zigzags, but there's a common thread. I did not graduate from Ithaca College, but I did graduate from Smith College in 1988, and I went directly to Wall Street. And what I found out is that what I believed in and what Wall Street wasn't for me. So then I left and I went and got my master's in teaching and taught for several years until my mom got sick with ovarian cancer. And that changed everything because I saw how she struggled. And she also started a foundation for children with art therapy because she was an artist. And I kind of dabbled in that for a little bit. My mom did pass away, and I took over that foundation, running that foundation. And that was really the beginning of my nonprofit experience. Since then, I've been in higher ed fundraising, and most currently was the executive director at Susan G. Komen in Charlotte. Susan G. Komen fights breast cancer and is trying to reduce the mortality rate for breast cancer. And my actual board of director, the chair, was from Ithaca College, a 2001 graduate. So kind of cool connection there. Currently, I am consulting, which is basically providing solutions to clients around organization, strategy, board support, and fundraising.
Thank you, everybody. And Stamie, it's wonderful to hear that you had another Ithaca College connection that I wasn't aware of before.
Yes.
Wherever you go, you'll find IC connections and alumni, right? So really great to hear about all of your backgrounds. I think it's interesting to see the variety of issues that everybody is engaged in. And I think if we wanted to transition to our next question, if you wanted to each talk a little bit about kind of anything else you wanted to share about the mission of your organization or the current issues that you're focusing in on, as well as how things that are currently taking place in society, both on a social and pandemic front or cultural, anything else that's kind of impacting your work, specifically in your organization's mission. I think that would be great and really give everybody a chance to kind of understand what's happening right now with our nonprofit organizations. And we don't have to go in alphabetical order. If anybody wants to jump in, you can feel free to jump in first.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I saw an article that was basically with the pandemic and the social justice issues that are going on right now. Nonprofits are at the forefront in the fight against all of this, really, basically, the haves and the have-nots. And I think there's a call to action that I'm hearing to really look at what we're doing as nonprofits in social justice and in economic mobility and equality. I know at Susan G. Komen, we had a bold goal to reduce the number of breast cancer deaths by 50% by 2026. And the only way to do that was to reduce, to do two things, to pour money into research, but also to reduce racial disparities and health disparities. So we were finding that African-American and Latinx people were dying at a much higher rate than Caucasians. And why is that? And how are we the solution? Because at the end of the day, nonprofits were trying to find a solution to a problem. that is what a nonprofit is. You know, how do we find solutions to problems that are going on? And donors are looking to find solutions to where they want to put their money, right? They want to solve a problem. That's what a donor wants to do. And our job is to match the donor with this problem that they want to solve.
Thank you, Stamie. And we were just talking about at my position at Project 351 about the idea that nonprofits are here to solve a problem, which is, I think, true so much of the time in all of my other nonprofit experience. And at Project 351, we in light of the pandemic, we're facing really interesting questions, which is, so our mission is to unite 8th graders from every city and town of Massachusetts for civic engagement and community service. So we're not a nonprofit looking to like work ourselves out of a job, which is oftentimes what nonprofits are trying to do by solving breast cancer or solving other crises, homelessness. And so during the pandemic, a lot of our donors were really interested in supporting the frontline issues of the pandemic, mainly food insecurity and homelessness, which are two issues facing the whole country, and specifically in Boston with the price of housing here. So we were looking at how can we activate our 8th graders and our high schoolers to address these issues in service, which is a huge part of what we do. But with the pandemic, it's really challenging to unite people in community service and physical service. So we actually had to change our entire program to be a virtual service platform, and really teach our young people how to fundraise, which we've never done before. And it's been really exciting and really challenging. And we taught our young people we raised over $20,000 for 3 nonprofits fighting issues of hunger and food insecurity and childhood homelessness in the past 4 months, instead of doing direct community service. And then in light of a lot with like the racial tension in our country and cultural tension in our country, we're in a really unique position because we have stakeholders from every town of Massachusetts, which as a state racially isn't like very diverse, but is socioeconomically really diverse. And in the cities, there are like the 5 cities in Massachusetts, it is primarily people of color and Black communities. And so we have people of every political background, of every socioeconomic status, of every cultural background, ethnicity. Basically, we map what our state looks like. And so those challenges have really come to light over the past 4 months. Of some of our young people's parents are firefighters and police officers, and some of our young people have been experiencing police brutality themselves or with their families. And so we're really been focusing on how do we educate across all of these different sectors and the intersectionality of all of the identities to build bridges for young people, so then young people can come together and work together regardless of their like beliefs and backgrounds, which has been a very challenging and very exciting thing to work on, and really gives me hope for the younger generations fighting these issues. And hopefully nonprofits will not be, like as Tammy said, not be in need as much if we can solve these issues at the root causes, which is some of what we're trying to do with middle and high schoolers.
Thanks, Danielle. I can jump in next. So within the public health realm, which is very COVID related, and being at the EPA, you're affected based on your division. So for example, within the air division, the industry is impacted because there's now a lot more work that needs to be done. There's a lot more research and there's a lot more funding available for research. For example, because COVID is airborne, there now has to be research done on not only outdoor air quality, but also indoor air quality. So if you have an air conditioning system that's shared throughout an apartment building, for example, like in New York City, where there are a lot of apartments and people living in the same building, there's research for that to see whether or not the virus can actually spread through ventilation systems. And then there's also just walking outside and measuring air quality and seeing what distance can the virus actually spread from, or how long before someone gets into contact with it, or how long can it last in surfaces. So in terms of air quality, that's how the field is being impacted. So if you're studying air and you're interested in research, like, tons of opportunities available for you, right? Versus if you're in the water division, not so much, because COVID doesn't really affect someone in the water division. And so those people are just basically working from home and not having a lot of work to do because they can't be in the fields to actually do water measurements or participate in a lot of projects they're doing. My projects in particular, I'm also affected a little bit like the water division because my projects are in Superfund, which is cleaning up contaminated land and areas. And because of COVID and social distancing and state legislation to have social distancing or to shut down certain work projects, I'm not in the field as often. I'm actually working from home. And so I'm helping other divisions with their projects that are in higher demand because I can't be in the field helping with cleanup projects. And so you can see kind of based on your division, that's how you're more so affected. And there's also the component of what products you can use to clean and what products are certified or CDC approved in order to help cleaning up and preventing the virus from spreading and affecting communities even worse. There was a whole debacle about bleach and bleach drinking and how do you properly use your detergents and your cleanup products so that you can help to keep surface areas clean. So those are some of the ways that the current events have impacted just my work and at the agency, and even are we able to work from home, or do we have to make exceptions and be in the field to actually do research or conduct analyses? So those are just some of the examples from the environmental public health standpoint.
I'll go next. So with me being involved with international affairs in the United Nations, actually it's interesting because my work and the things I do are very related to international politics, as you can imagine. So inherently the UN itself is very political. You have 193 countries with very different ideologies. Like imagine a space where you have Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Argentina all together, in one space. So it's very interesting. And the way they view nonprofits or NGOs in that space, they call them NGOs. They view NGOs as lobby organizations because technically when they interact with the UN, they come to lobby. So they lobby or advocate for things like climate change, or the UN should focus more on like women's issues and this and that. And it's it's just a good thing. It's a good thing. And with me, my role at the time of the World Human Accountability Organization, I was a partnership manager, which I used to jokingly tell people that I was their lobbyist. So I would go in and advocate for various issues or find different partners or different organizations to work and plan different events. But since COVID-19, since the pandemic and everything, it's been very tricky because now the entire UN agency, I have a UN badge and that's how I would get in and out of the UN. The entire UN agency has either gone virtual or the UN itself has shut down for the entire year. I had a phone call last week with this woman who's in charge of NGO advocacy for the UN Department of Global Communications. And that agency directly deals with nonprofits, globally nonprofits, and represents their voices to the UN. She told me that the UN itself is shut down for the rest of the year. And I mean, we just talked about a bunch of various other things that maybe we could partner on. So I've been doing a lot of virtual talks and virtual panel discussions, one to keep myself busy, and I find it as a very useful way to network and get your ideas out. So beyond being involved with ANCSSC, acronym, the Alliance, I'm also an advisor for this Indian think tank, and we've been doing talks on various things such as China and India as emerging powers in the post-COVID-19 world. We did a talk on trade and investment and investing in the United Nations SDGs. We did I personally did another talk on the importance of gender equity or gender equality, I guess we should use equity, in, post COVID-19. And so what it's turned into, I guess because of my realm, everything is kind of political in that sense. So the talks we do are kind of as a way to advocate or say, hey, United Nations, maybe you guys should focus on this instead, or do this or that, So that's my space. It's been very difficult to raise funds naturally, because with the nonprofit sector, the way you raise money is to get donations, and you get donations from the private sector and businesses. And if globally businesses aren't doing so well, then naturally the nonprofit sector isn't going to be doing so well. And I heard that a couple of days ago that the Boy Scouts of America actually went into bankruptcy, which shocked me, because that's one of the biggest nonprofits in the United States. So right now, just in the state of the global economy, it's just a rough time for anyone, actually.
Actually, unfortunately, a great lead into how I'm seeing the current pandemic affecting the work. As I've evolved in my career, I've definitely self-labeled myself as a nonprofit nerd. I love kind of just the study of how nonprofits work and how we work as organizations. And we're just a really interesting sector that interacts with the government, with the private sector. And the three must work together well in order for us to truly solve problems. So I often spend my time thinking about how we all work together toward shared solutions. And I think right now is a really critical time as we think in that way. So I just have some stats that I wanted to share. So the nonprofit sector is the nation's third largest private employer, with 1.3 million nonprofits employing roughly 12.5 million people. Unfortunately, a Hopkins study estimated that 1.6 million nonprofit jobs were lost between February and May. And unfortunately, what I think this does is it really puts a spotlight on some of the things that we've already been seeing in the nonprofit sector. It is a big sector, and there are lots of problems to be solved. And we're a sector that has a history of innovation and problem solving and pivoting and figuring out how to change. But we also have a history of being clunky and non-communicative, and we have some corruption, we have some inefficiencies. And so unfortunately, those things are kind of coming together. And so where I've been spending my time is thinking about what is going to survive, what is going to be needed in this new world. I don't think we're going back to what we were before. What is it that we're going, in some ways good? Where are we going? What is the future? Some things are not good that we're going to lose. So in terms of my work, as I'm looking at all the different kinds of nonprofits that I'm looking at, there are two things that I've been thinking about. I'm sorry, I guess it's actually three things I've been thinking about. What is going to be key to the nonprofit sector solving the problems that are that exist and are exacerbated or highlighted is leadership. And leaders who are problem solvers, can adapt quickly, are calm problem solvers, or really getting out there and shouting what needs to happen, which often takes its form in advocacy. Those are the ones that are going to survive. Those that are willing to partner and again, come up with shared solutions to the problems that exist, those are going to survive. I believe very, very strongly in using data and measurement and evaluation as we're all looking at our missions. Those organizations that can prove what they're doing is achieving their mission, those are going to survive. And again, that flexibility. So how are we solving problems? How can we work together? And I love Danielle, like I love often that in our sector, we say, we're trying to put ourselves out of business, right? We want to eradicate something. But there are new problems coming up. And so how might we shift to work toward solving new problems? Again, those are the ones that are going to survive. And I think another, just one of
Stamie, it looks like you maybe froze.
other point before we go into
Okay,
Am I back?
We lost you for a little bit there.
Okay. It's telling me I'm unstable. I'll just keep going. I'm not sure what you lost, but one other stat that I just wanted to share, or something that I think about, is I'm a frontline fundraiser. So I'm out there soliciting gifts from government, individuals, and foundations. But I also think a lot of nonprofits run on contract work or fee for service work. And I think that we're going to have to really look at that in a different way versus kind of the very traditional nonprofit fundraising. So what kind of services can we be billing for? What kind of government contracts and grants? And as the economy continues to shift, how do we think about a revenue generation? So that's how I spend my time these days.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing those insights and a little bit more about your work. I think it's fascinating really to hear what everybody is doing. And so we've actually had a couple of questions come in. So I have a question for you from Jenna, who is asking, how is the process of getting grant funding been affected by the recent financial crisis? And I think that's a good one to start with because it touches on a little bit about what a couple of you shared. But if you wanted to go a little deeper in addressing Jenna's question, that would be great.
I can start with a little bit. So my nonprofit only has 3 full-time staff members. So I'm the program person, and then we have somebody whose full-time job is development, and then an executive director. But since there's 3 of us, we all do everything, which is mostly common in smaller nonprofits. And I think grant, and I'm sure Stamie and Amy can talk more about this, but grant writing, I think, has become even more critical, but also more difficult because you're competing for either the same amount of dollars or fewer dollars with more people, because more people are looking to get money, maybe not from the private sector, which is what Amy was saying a little bit, from individual donors. And going along with what Amy said is looking at how are you adapting your model and your mission and your service to meet the needs currently and the future needs. Because what you might have been doing, which is a really important mission, might no longer fit in what is the current need of the country. And the nonprofits that are going to survive and thrive are the ones who are going to adapt and meet those challenges. So specifically with us, we're looking at how can we invest more money and more training and leadership development into our Black and POC communities of young people, because we know that 1, that's a need that we haven't been able to completely focus on, and 2, that is where grant money is right now. So it's meeting what grants and foundations want to see with their money, and also helping our young people develop more and really raising the voices of the Black and POC leaders in our community and young leaders to create platforms for them to then become the next generation of nonprofit, civic engagement, political leaders in our country. But previous, 3 years ago, we weren't writing grants specifically for these communities. We were just writing for our whole state, all 351 towns. And we have realized that is no longer an effective strategy. And we need to now look at our communities as subsets, and how do we write grants to specifically meet the needs of the different subsets of our larger community, which is a new challenge.
I can add a little bit. I think that for grants going forward, that those that we serve need to be at the table. That's a really important thing. When you have a grant committee, is that grant committee representative of the community that you serve? The other thing is Susan G. Komen was really a grant. We were, providing grants year in, year out. And a couple years ago, the shift started happening before COVID, that we needed to provide direct services, because why should an individual or a company give us money if they can give it to XYZ, directly? So what we call direct services. So Komen pivoted to direct services to provide transportation and other things that they saw were getting in the way of reducing breast cancer mortality. So I think those are the 2 things that I've seen. And just also your processes around grants, who's on the grant committee, why you're giving grants. It's all shifting, and it's shifting quickly. Yeah.
I'll go next. So I I see that there's a less money to go around. So right now it feels like it's almost like a famine in a way. It's a famine, and you have a lot of stakeholders, a lot of nonprofits or other entities trying to get grant money to do projects. And the way some nonprofits, think tanks, or even small private sector companies get grants, you could get one from, like, say, a private entity. But I guess in my realm, it seems that they're more government grants. Government grants, whether from USAID, USAID, the U.S. government, or UN agencies, to be as a consultant. With USAID, I'm just going to give an example. So the U.S. government has this project in West Africa called Power Africa, right? And Power Africa is meant to, try and do international development work throughout the continent of Africa to promote more green and sustainable energy. I see it a little bit as a little bit of a counterweight to the China's One Belt, One Road initiative, which I won't really get into. But so what the U.S. government was doing was that they had a bunch of grants that nonprofits, small businesses could apply to be as, consultants for the U.S. government or contractors. And they would get these grants and do project work within these specific countries. Now that the pandemic is going on, there's less money being focused on, international development and all these other agencies. And so there's less money going around, and there are a lot of other businesses that are starting to suffer. But I guess just one quick other point, because of this, some people, I guess in the US government, the government is going to start getting bigger, and some people turn to the government as a potential employer in a pandemic era. So I'm just sharing a little tidbit from someone I know who works in the Department of State told me.
This definitely seems like a challenging time to keep fundraising and keep money coming in and be able to secure grants. I think something else that's challenging for everybody actually is in line with the question that we have from May. Whether we're in nonprofits or not in nonprofits, I think everybody's probably feeling similar. May has asked, how do you keep people, staff, and donors alike invested and energized right now when everyone is so tired out? If anybody has some suggestions or tips, feel free to share.
I'll do something really quick. Something I've seen a lot of organizations do is use the Zoom tool in a fun way. I've seen a lot of organizations do some really nice town halls. And some of the things that I've seen come out of that is often when legal and appropriate, to actually bring in participants or those who are participating in what the nonprofit is doing, and often bring their voice forward in a way that often doesn't happen in nonprofits that are a little more top down. So really connecting with the work and using the Zoom tool to do that.
I would add on to Amy, it's about the mission, right? It's your why. So asking yourself, what's your why? What is the organization's why? And really tapping into that. In nonprofit, we talk a lot about culture of philanthropy, which is all about being, donor-centered, mission-centered, people-centered, right? Driven by people. And so if you put that front and center and you share stories and impact through Zoom, like Amy was saying, through town halls, you're reminding everyone, including yourself, your team, why you're in nonprofit or for-profit or really anything. What's your why?
And it's okay to take a break and self-care and make sure that the staff gets a break and you get a break, and acknowledging that everyone is in a pandemic.
Yeah, and I think now more than ever, donors, like Stamie said this at the beginning, want to feel like they're solving a problem. And right now there's, no matter what nonprofit industry you're in, there's more problems than ever that need to be solved because the pandemic's impacting everyone. So sharing those like small joys and small stories, I think goes a really long way. And doing regular. So we've started doing like town halls monthly that is open to everyone in our community, including donors, adults, young people. And I think that's really powerful. And what Amy said is like bringing the nonprofit, like people who receive services through your nonprofit into the conversation, if appropriate. So I have it easy because we have 8th graders who are really fun to talk to. And so adults love hearing from them. And we've been trying to just integrate that more and more just to show that like small moments of joy that we sometimes forget about in the day to day.
All good points. And I just want to kind of second what everyone is saying. At EPA, what we're doing is remembering again the why, right? Our mission is to protect human health and the environment. So as long as we keep that focus, like our why is to work with people and protect human health, like that gives us the drive. But at the same time, when we feel tired, like in my department, if we're ever tired, sometimes we have virtual meetings or we have these activities that we do kind of to check in with each other to see how everyone is keeping up. And if there's a area where we don't particularly feel equipped or we feel tired or burnt out, we would tag someone else in as a partner to say like, hey, can you partner with us to help address this issue that we're not very sure that we can address because either we don't have the resources or the staff is just a little bit tired, you know, with other things that they're doing, and kind of just working as a team with others and figuring out how can we collectively come together to solve some of these problems that we're doing and help each other out. Because believe it or not, like we're not the only ones who are tired. Every once in a while, we understand other people might be tired. And so that's where partnership really comes in handy for us to figure out, okay, what departments might be overburdening in this season, or how are current events impacting others more heavily. And so can we tag someone else in who's not affected as much so they can kind of help us to address some of the issues that we're having. That's one approach that we're taking that I really appreciate, and it's working for us because, yeah, it's interesting times that we're living in.
Definitely interesting times, and I think all of the advice is great. One that I hold to myself on a daily basis is remembering the why. So thank you for sharing that. We do have a couple of additional questions. One from Kimberly to Amy. Can you talk a little bit more about the shift in your model, specifically the fee for service?
Sure. I mean, that's a couple-day webinar on its own. I think, well, one, originally remembering that some nonprofits are fully dependent on contributed revenue. Some have an earned revenue and a contributed revenue model, and some are all earned. It really depends on the model. So less a shift, because I think there are some organizations that are more well-placed, are better placed to be able to think about what they might be able to sell. So I guess the answer to the question is, we should all think about what it is that can be packaged and sold with every nonprofit, whether it's training or how we think about a government grant or how we think about a foundation. The funding models continue to change as funders are looking to achieve different things. So not really answering your question. The shift to, I guess, just thinking about more than just contributed income is important, but also not getting totally taken off in a new direction where you're not fulfilling your mission, or that you're really looking to, the dollars start to drive, what you can sell drives what your work is. There's that fine balance. And I think back to that, the data, the measurement and evaluation is also, I think, a way to think about how you're using the funding that you have or the funding that you want to attract to achieve outcomes. So really focusing on those outcomes to show the return on investment to any funder, whether it's contributed or earned.
Thank you, Amy. So Alana, I'll invite you to come to the screen and ask your question on video.
Hi, I'm Alana, and my question is for all of you guys. As someone who is interested in working in the nonprofit world, how can I get involved during this time?
I'll go first. I love that question, and I don't think there's any one correct answer. As you saw with my background, I kind of did multiple things that have all helped me. My teaching degree, Wall Street, all different. But I would say internships are very valuable at Susan G. Komen, we always had interns from college, and many times they were hired, but sometimes they figured out that nonprofit wasn't for them, that they would rather volunteer, right? Because there's all different forms of being part of a nonprofit, right? You can be on as a volunteer, you can be a donor, you can, you can work there. So I think internships are great mentors in the nonprofit space. I think are really valuable, and really different skills, maybe resources, books to read, which maybe we could provide to you, but talking, reading, and experiencing it are really, I think, the key.
I agree with Stamie on that. And I think sometimes we, like when I was in college or recent grad, I really struggled with internships in the nonprofit industry because most times they're unpaid. And that's often a challenge for people. And I was a first generation college student, like a low income family, and just didn't have the opportunity to do an unpaid internship, but really wanted to be in nonprofits. And so I went through the volunteer route and actually volunteered my way into my job. Which I think often happens at nonprofits is like you start volunteering on like maybe an event base, you go to one thing, and then there's always room for volunteers, and then you can go to a couple places and find what you're passionate about, and then there's generally like some way to get on staff. And so I taught first because I was like something I liked doing. It was a stable career. It like paid my bills. I loved young people. And I love teaching, but I knew it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And so then I just started getting involved in all these nonprofits as a volunteer. And then kind of found the one that was most interesting to me and just kept staying with it. And luckily I was able to like, a position opened and was able to like make it into a job. So it's important to like make sure that you're not burning yourself out and like not being able to like pay your bills, which I think often happens in nonprofits, especially if you want to be like in a larger city. And just remembering that there's like multiple ways to get there.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say that I agree with everyone that interning is a good way. And I think right now would be a good time to, try and intern for a nonprofit or any organization actually, because everything is online and you could be at home, or I know Ithaca College is allowing people back in October. You could be on campus and do things online. You could, because I'm doing stuff internationally, you could intern for some nonprofit in South Korea, and it could be online, you know what I mean? So I think, yeah, intern is a good way, and it does look good on your resume. So yeah, just give it a shot if you'd like.
To speak up, I know there are a lot of opportunities in nonprofit, right? Because even just on the panel, we have folks in education, government, international affairs. And so if you're wondering, like you're interested in nonprofit, but you're not exactly sure what is your niche, I would ask the question just from professionals who you're connected with, what is the greatest need that you're trying to address right now? And how can I be an asset or help you to solve that problem? And if you find yourself having answers to like one particular niche versus another, then that will probably be the area you want to kind of pursue a little bit more in terms of figuring out creative ways to address it. If it's virtual, if you want to help with social media outreach, maybe sometimes it's just sharing content, and someone would pay you to do that, and you can work from home in the current climate that we're in. Maybe it's if it's an organization that's like around the corner from where you live, maybe you can go there and help out every once in a while with some of the projects or needs that they have. And so I think that would be a proactive approach, not just to figuring out how to get involved, but to know exactly what would be your niche or what would be the place that you most fit into and you would be the most asset to. That's my recommendation, as you try to move forward.
Everything that everyone else said, I agree. And the other thing I'd add on is that we are a problem-solving sector. And so I would be really clear with anyone that you're talking to, once you've figured out kind of what your niche is, what you're good at, what you're hearing is a need out there, and telling people that you have those skills and you can help them solve their problem, we are all crushed right now. We have so much coming at us. We're trying to help keep all employees happy and program. Like everything it is a big spin. And if someone got in touch with me and said, I would like to help you, that's please, let's talk and let's see where I can take that energy and help you find someone who needs help, because a lot of us need it.
Seriously.
I would say we need it all over the place, like financially, like someone that's in finance, in marketing, in public relations, like all different aspects of doing business. That's where the need is. It's everywhere.
Tech tools. I wrote down, I was like, data, finance, tech tools, advocacy, research. If you can do any of those things, please let people know.
Yeah, my undergrad's in communication management design, and I thought I was gonna like be a layout designer for a magazine. And so the most skills I use on a daily basis are my graphic design skills, even though I'm like a program manager. So there's always the need, and just network. That's like the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing I learned at Ithaca, is to network with everyone from Kristen. And you'll find ways to get involved.
Thank you guys all so much. I really appreciate your advice.
Wonderful advice. Thank you. And thanks, Alana, for coming on to ask your question. Our final question is going to be from Catherine, so I'll invite her to come on the screen and ask her question directly as well. And then we'll wrap up with a minute or two for final thoughts.
Hi, thank you guys all for being here. It's been really great to listen to your insight. My question was about social media in nonprofits today. I know like as a nonprofit, it's like really important to kind of externalize your mission, so to speak, but I kind of find that, the internet, there's so much content, it can be difficult to kind of stand out. So I was wondering if you guys had any tips on like how to effectively use social media. To what extent is it important to your mission, or would you recommend a different forum to kind of gain support?
I can go first. We use social media a lot at Susan G. Komen, especially Facebook, and I would say we use LinkedIn the least for what we were doing. Facebook served as a fundraising platform for us for our biggest event, Race for the Cure, and our demographic. We also use Twitter and Instagram. There's a lot of different thoughts on social media, but one thing is, you hit it on the head. How do you leverage it to get your message across and to share impact, tell stories, because it's about the storytelling. But it's also about, like Amy said, data, and really using your data, right? So I don't have any answers. I do know that social media is not going away for nonprofits, but I will tell you that there's a huge need for a social media savvy marketer on nonprofit teams, whether they're small or big. That I believe that is a huge need. Someone that understands the data and understands social media and can use the data around social media to drive impact. That need is not going to go away. I think it's bigger than ever, and that you would probably always have a job if you were a specialist in something like that.
And it's a great way to volunteer with a nonprofit. So to go back to the previous question, if you want to if you're into that and you want to volunteer, most nonprofits can use help with social media in some regard.
For EPA, we mostly use Facebook and Twitter, and those are strategic decisions because we needed a platform that gives shorthand messages. So like Twitter, you have that snippet and it's limited time, but we also needed a platform to use long messages, which Facebook comes in handy. I mean, we could have used Instagram, but Facebook and Twitter seemed more popular in terms of government sector. So that's why we use those two. But I think it would totally depend on your organization and what their mission is in terms of deciding what platforms to use, and in making that connection again to nonprofit and your why you're making an impact within the world is that a lot of the work we're doing, it has to do with interacting with people in the community and community engagement. And so having social media platforms, almost everyone has a social media account of some form. And so if you understand how to use social media to interact with someone who you're aiming to address a why for, solve a problem, then that is the perfect match. And if you can show that you have those skills or how you're engaging individuals and helping them to understand your mission or your vision or how you're trying to solve this problem, what they can do to help you solve the problem, or maybe even progress that you're making in solving your problem, that can be a really impactful approach to get involved within the nonprofit world, and also utilizing social media as a method of addressing some of those problems. I hope that answered your question. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for answering all of our questions and sharing your insights and perspective and advice. What I'd like to do now is invite all of our attendees to come on video if they would like to do so, so that the panelists can see who is here today listening to them talk. And if you don't want to, there's no pressure to come on screen. We've got a few who are hanging out listening, which is fine. If our panelists had a parting couple of words of wisdom that they wanted to share, I'd invite you to do that.
I'll say we are in a pandemic. It's also a great time to listen and learn. People are willing to talk, as Jonathon said, from all over the world. And so the fact that you all showed up today, keep doing it.
I would say, oh, sorry.
Oh, you can keep doing that. So what I was gonna say is that yes, we're in the middle of a pandemic, as Amy said. So don't get discouraged. I know it's a very mentally taxing and uncertain time for everyone, actually. So don't get discouraged. And obviously, all of you are here because you're interested in the nonprofit sector. So yes, keep doing your best to be involved. And we're alumni. Tap into your alumni network. If you're interested in international affairs or whatever, definitely speak to me. I'm on a UN committee, so. So yeah, we're here. So reach out to your alumni network and be confident and be brave. We'll get through this.
I was just going to add that philanthropy is a lot more than fundraising. It's time, it's talent, and it's treasure. But it's really about people and relationship building. Because people will say, "Oh, you asked for money." I say, "No, I am a relationship builder." So I think that's important to remember. And wherever there's challenge, there's opportunity. So yeah.
Say, adding on to everyone's great advice, if you know where you want to end up in terms of the area, there's lots of different young nonprofit networks. So there's Young Nonprofit Professionals Network, which has a lot of chapters across the country, and you can get involved in before you move there if it's to get a idea of the nonprofits in that area. It's a really great thing to do. And then same, reach out to people. I know networking sounds really scary, and it's still really scary for me, and it's a lot of my job, but just going out there and reaching out to alum that are in the field or other people that are doing things that are interesting to you. Most people, it's mutually beneficial to talk to people. It's not, you're not going burdening somebody by trying to reach out to have a Zoom conversation or to ask questions over email, because we all learn from talking to college students every day. We actually, I think, get better at our jobs, especially thinking about the digital world we're living in. I'm sure most of you guys have far more skills in the social media realm and other things we were just talking about. So reach out to people and think about where you want to end up and different fields that are interesting to you. And then take self-care. It's hard to be on Zoom all day. Get outside.
I would leave with the parting advice to be creative. Don't let the state of current events or even the nation like cramp your creativity, because this is a perfect time. Because a lot of people don't know how to react in this time and don't know what to do, I think a creative approach is the best approach that you can possibly take. For example, maybe it's having a virtual coffee chat with someone, or virtual bingo, and then you can invite maybe like 1 or 2 people that you're interested in learning more about, and just having that time and opportunity. Because believe it or not, you're not the only one social distancing. Almost everyone is, and everyone feels isolated. And so being the initiator or the creator of a group or a chat or an event that's just small and intimate, it really goes a long way. And that's a perfect way to network. So don't, like, if you can, just step out of the box and the limited imagination and try to do something that's creative and different, and see where it takes you, and have fun, as much fun as you possibly can in this time.
Love that idea of virtual bingo. So Cheryl, one of my colleagues, is on the call today too. We'll have to think about some virtual career bingo maybe for the fall semester. So I want to thank everybody for participating today. We are just past 1 o'clock, and I want to honor our panelists' time. I will also put them all on the spot and encourage you to reach out to them, perhaps on LinkedIn if they're willing, for any follow-up. That can be a great way to network and ask any additional questions, ask about things that they mentioned today that you weren't able to, or that you have some more questions or more information about. So if our panelists are willing to add their LinkedIn profiles in the chat, feel free to do that. And then we will be able to send those out afterwards. So you can find them as well on LinkedIn, I'm sure, fairly easily. So thank you again for coming today. Thank you to our panelists. We'll do a virtual applause as an appreciation for you. And with that, we will close for today. So thank you, everybody. I will ask our panelists to stay on videos, and we'll get a photo of everybody, of all of our panelists together as soon as everybody's wrapped up.